Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Play Suzerain. So let's just real quick, this is all stuff we already read last time around. Let's see, we have over here opening for the Benfi Festival. I think I already read all of these reports. At least I'm pretty sure. Could certainly be remembering incorrectly. Yeah, no, we already read those. So, okay, yeah, the only thing we have is the opening of the Benfi Festival. Our motorcade slowly made its way towards the magnificent Benfi High Arts Center. Night was falling and the festival was about to begin. I flipped through the brochure that had been given to us at the hotel. Monica's face was featured on the front page, but the schedule on the inside still said that Corten Lesti, mayor of Enrica, would be making the opening remarks. My last-minute announcement that my wife would be replacing Corten must have caused some confusion at the print shop. The Benfi Festival was one of the biggest events of the year. It originally marked the start of the annual religious pilgrimage, a weeks-long journey still undertaken by devout tourists. But today it was better known as a cultural celebration that drew thousands of revelers to the city. There were film screenings, concerts, theater and dance performances, art exhibitions, and celebrity-studded nightly galas. The opening ceremonies were broadcast on TV and watched by millions. As the car slowed, a coterie of reporters and security guards rushed to meet us. I turned my attention to Monica. She nervously eyed the waiting crowd. Yeah, we'll just hold her hand. I took her hand in mine and gave it a firm squeeze. She smiled and turned her head to look out the window once again. As soon as Sergei opened the door, we were enveloped by the roar of the crowd. The next few minutes were a blur of handshakes, photos, and reporters' questions. The onlookers cheered as we walked the red carpet to the newly built Arts Center. We followed the guards through the cavernous white halls until we came to a set of arched doors leading to the auditorium. We waited outside as security did a quick sweep of the area, then headed in. So, this is it. I will finally stand on the same platform as you. A platform where Sordland's women will have their voices heard and acknowledged for the first time. Break a leg. The two of us proceeded to the podium. I spoke first, delivering a short paragraph about the importance of Benfi and the Festival to Sordland. I then turned to Monica. Thunderous applause echoed around the auditorium as she stepped to the microphone. I exited the stage and found my seat, right next to Corten Lesti. Ladies and gentlemen, as the First Lady of Sordland, I welcome all of you to the Benfi Festival. The crowd erupted again, clapping and cheering. Corten Lesti leaned over and hissed into my ear, "Mr. President, I'm afraid you have made a great mistake. There will be consequences." Let's see. What kind of consequences? Your little stunt has lost you my support in the assembly. I kept my eyes on the stage. When the applause subsided, Monica resumed her speech. This festival holds a very important place in all of our hearts. It is a celebration of art, music, theater, but above all, it is a celebration of the people of Benfi and their free and open-minded spirit. As we all unite for the festivities, we must not forget the values that have inspired them. Today marks the beginning of the Week of the Spirit, a time for vitality, growth, and new beginnings. The crowd was hanging on to her every word, but the mayor of Enrica and his entourage didn't seem as impressed. I stand on this podium today to speak about change, about a new beginning for our society. Sordland calls itself a free country, yet half of its citizens are still barred from enjoying the same freedoms that the other half takes for granted. I refer to myself and my fellow women. A rumble went through the crowd, scattered applause mixed with murmurs of discontent. To truly move forward, we must make a break from old traditions and strive towards equality for all, equal rights, equal pay, equal access to education. Enough! The entire hall fell silent. The mayor of Enrica rose and spoke. I will not let this woman besmirch the traditions upon which our great country was built. Let's let our wife try to handle this and only jump in if we absolutely have to. I sat down and watched the events unfold. Curtin turned towards the audience, speaking loudly enough to be heard without a microphone. Miss Rain, what right do you possibly have to pass judgment on our values as Sorge citizens? You are not a politician, you are not a speaker, you are merely a woman who's lucky enough to be married to the president. Your place is not at this podium, it is at home, tending to your husband and children. The crowd was going rowdier. Some booed and jeered at Curtin's words, others whooped in approval. Monica froze completely. The audience grew louder. I had to do something. I walked up to the stage and stood beside my wife at the podium. The mayor was still standing defiantly in the front row. Let's see. The reality is, I think all of these basically end up with the same thing. The end of this event, more or less. I don't think there's a significant difference between them. I mean, there's probably some changes regarding Monica's opinion of us, as well as Curtin and maybe just some general public approval stuff, but I don't think any of it really makes a significant difference. Again, I could be wrong about that. I don't know that for certain. That is just a guess. Let's see. You know what? I think I'm just gonna go ahead for... I think I did number 3 in my test. Or my personal game, rather. I'm going to go for number 2 here. Mr. Lesty, please calm down. Take your seat and let her finish. Now. I will not stand idly by as our Sordish values are being tested, especially by our very own president and his harlot of a wife. Is rudeness a Sordish value now? Is impropriety? I'm only doing what I feel is right to protect my country. Let's see. You feel it's right to berate a woman, the president's wife at that. Her ideas are dangerous, Anton. They'll lead us down a dark path. Your ideas, on the other hand, will lead us back to the Dark Ages. Without our traditions, we are lost. Let's see. And without change, we are fossils. Now, please, sit down. The crowd was booing Curtin loudly now. He looked around the room and let out a deep sigh. My apologies, Mr. President, Miss First Lady. I crossed the line. Monica had regained her composure by now. She took her place at the microphone. My heartfelt apologies to you as well, Mr. Lesty. I assure you my intention was not to offend anyone, especially a senior member of the Assembly such as yourself, who has pledged his life to the betterment of our country. Curtin smiled faintly. Monica turned to the audience. I hope one day we shall be able to set aside our differences as we have done today and walk towards a happier, brighter future for all of Sordland's citizens, male and female alike. We must all remember the future cannot exist without the past, and I believe we're witnessing the meeting of our glorious past and our bright future right here in Benfey today. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to officially open the Benfey Festival. Morgana Westcore. Vectern Sista, everyone in the hall, including Curtin, finished the decades-old saying. The crowd erupted in cheers, even Curtin started clapping. People started chanting Monica's name, and the band broke into the official festival anthem. The opening event was finally finished. But I knew Curtin would never forget what happened today. Let's see, Grooney returns to normal life. Ooh, this week with the actions of the government and the police, the protests in the Grooney region came to an end, which have paralyzed the economy and left several people dead. One protest leader from Volgan said, "We want peace and unity. Nobody wants to see riots or violence. We are fed up with police brutality." And Wayland deploying special forces to Vernon. I don't know where that is. Let's look over here. They said Vernon. I'm going to assume that that's probably like a small town that's not on our map. Am I reading that right? Oh, Wayland. Wayland. I was looking at the wrong country. It's cut off here, but oh, never mind. It's just cut off because I was hovering over Wayland. Okay, Vernon. So right here along our border. That's fun. Thank you very much for that. Reports from our border and the Wessex city Vernon show that there are about 1,000 people running away from Wessex military forces towards the Sordish border. Governor of Bergia reports hundreds of BFF collaborators. Say are living inside Deer, posing a significant threat to national security. Calm returns to Nargis. Wonderful, wonderful. We're ever so slowly dealing with the protests. Well, I say ever so slowly. I think they've been largely dealt with. I don't think we really have much left in that regard. Oh, we got some downtime at home finally. Also, I think our growth went back down again after that. It felt like eternity since the Benfey festival. Had it really only been less than 24 hours? I was at home now, drinking an afternoon coffee on my balcony. Afternoon coffee doesn't sound like a great thing to have, if I'm completely honest. A stack of newspapers lay by my side. I picked them up one by one, reading and rereading the articles about the festival. Some of the papers came out in full support of the First Lady for her brave speech, others took Curtin's side. Nearly all of them agreed that the First Lady had acquitted herself very well following the interruption. I was putting the last newspaper down as Monica joined me on the balcony. Listen, can we talk for a bit? Of course. What is it? Monica sat down and picked up the nearest newspaper. She pointed to a particularly insulting headline on the front page. I never in a million years would have wished for this, Anton. I just wanted to thank you for supporting me and apologize for creating such a spectacle. All I wanted was to bring the people of Sordland together, the way you're able to. But not like this. Her eyes were getting moist. A single tear fell onto the newspaper. Let's see. If you're gonna succeed in this, you have to be stronger. I know you can be. Oh, Anton. Her eyes filled with gratitude. I could see she'd slept as little as I had since the festival. Thank you. One more thing. You know how stubborn I am. When I gave that speech, I saw hope in the eyes of all the women in the audience. This is the right path for me, Anton. I want to officially adopt this cause as First Lady, to actually get involved in politics, not just give impromptu speeches. I could even help your education minister with these reforms she's working on. I know this is something you're passionate about as well. Can I count on you? Of course, my love. Looking forward to working closer together. Oh, Anton, this means so much to me. Monica hugged me tightly and I felt some of the past day's tensions melt away. Thank you. A noise came from the balcony door. We both turned our heads to see Deanna standing there. Mama, I'm hungry. Let's go to the kitchen, baby. We'll make Papa the best snack ever. Yeah. They left the balcony and returned half an hour later with a large cookie. Deanna had written my name and icing on it. Damn, that must be a big cookie. As I sipped my coffee and nibbled the cookie, I thought that I had made the right choice. Things were going to get harder, but at least my life at home was somewhat peaceful. Let's see, Arcasian access to Erloy Base. Preparations began in Erloy Air Force Base to expand the hangars and restructure the security of the air base in order to welcome the Arcasian planes in the short future. Arcasian security and logistics professionals have already been welcomed to the base to work with Sordish officials. Economic reports have delivered preliminary economic reports that the recession is deepening and the financial system is headed towards a potential collapse if we don't take serious action. Yep, I know. That's fully expected, if I'm honest. Workers at crossroads. As foreign ideologies continue to permeate our borders, Sordland's workers stand at a crossroads between Malunivist collectivism and Arcasian capitalism. Both approaches present their own unique challenges to our traditional values and working class ethos. As Sordland carves its own path, it is crucial that our strategy centers on protecting our workers and promoting domestic industry. Striking a balance between economic progress and safeguarding the dignity of labor is a critical task that lies ahead of us. As Sordland navigates its economic future, attracting top talent from abroad could be the key to sustained growth. A recent study revealed that skilled immigrants contribute significantly to innovation, job creation, and overall economic development. Moreover, these talented individuals boast competitiveness, often filling roles in sectors facing a domestic skills shortage. However, it's essential to balance this approach with investing in domestic education and training programs, thereby equipping homegrown talent to compete on an equal footing. Oh, and we finally get the one about the First Lady giving her speech. First Lady's opening speech was interrupted by Mayor of Enrica, Curtin Listy, who stood up to the remarks made by the First Lady. Mayor Listy has then continued with his disrespecting accusations in tone, incurring the wrath of the crowd. President Rain has interjected in the developing situation and saved the day by calming the attendees. Major Listy's disrespect will surely end up damaging his already declining reputation after this event. And yet he's going to try to go against us. ATO stability rocked by Quinal's potential departure. Oh, okay. Rumblings from Quinal suggest an intention to abandon their ATO membership, reverting back to an observer status. Such a move would cause a significant shift in regional power dynamics and alliances, threatening the stability of the ATO. The potential exit of Quinal not only poses questions about the unity and effectiveness of the organization, but also invites speculation about the wider geopolitical implications. As the potential exit looms, global observers are closely monitoring developments and bracing for the ripple effects this decision might have. Understandable. We'd have to pull up the map real quick to double check where Quinal is located, but if I recall correctly, I believe they're islands in the middle, basically, of the sea out here. So having them pull out is potentially a pretty decent setback for the ATO. While CSP-funded revolutions may promise progress, recent data reveals a more concerning picture. Countries experiencing such upheavals witness, on average, a 15% drop in GDP within the first 2 years. Moreover, 60% of these nations have also recorded a spike in civil unrest incidents. The reality often includes destabilization and significant setbacks in national development. Well, yes, considering that you specifically make mention of funded revolutions, yeah. The use of the word revolution to me here very clearly implies that basically a civil war breaks out in these countries or something to that effect. Yeah, a 15% drop in GDP, that seems about expected. If anything, I would expect it to potentially even be worse than that. But then again, that is supposed to be the average. So you probably have a fair few countries where it's a lot worse than this. This has led many international observers to scrutinize the efficacy of CSP's socio-political model. As nations grapple with the aftermath of such revolutions, it becomes abundantly clear that the path to development and reform is complex and fraught with challenges. The broader and of course, if we're being honest, some of those is also probably just because of getting really poor rulers. Okay, now Quinal, where are you? Oh, never mind. Quinal's right here. Okay, never mind. For some reason, I thought Quinal was these islands. I don't know why. You know, I'm really not quite sure why losing Quinal would be that big of a setback. But maybe it's just me. I kind of struggle with seeing why that would be the case. Either way, budget allocation of the Swordish armed forces. To determine the current situation of the military and its spending policy, we held a meeting in the White Room. Peter, Vulcan, and Asof were seated. General Vulcan, Mr. Lancia, let's start with the briefing. Very well, Mr. Vice President. We have prepared a briefing to convey further details about the current situation of our military. First off, we have received an updated communication from the Arcasian Military Command. Their planes are being moved into Erlori Air Base as we speak, under our supervision, of course. Good. Make sure to keep an eye on them. We don't want to antagonize them, but they are, by all means, a foreign country. You know, on our soil. So, keep an eye on them, but, don't necessarily make them feel unwelcome. Of course, Mr. President. Now, let's move on to our military. Which branch would you like to know about? Well, let's start with our army. They're, in many ways, probably one of the most important for us. Although, admittedly, the Air Force is pretty important as well because they have dual role capabilities in terms of being able to support efforts on the ground and at sea, both of which are pretty important for us. Especially if we get into a kerfuffle with Vogsland up here. What is the situation of our army? According to the latest reports from Camp Strongarm, currently we field 6 armies totaling up to approximately 400,000 active troops, which is a good amount. The real issue we are having is the quality, not quantity. Okay, what is the current equipment status? Our army is quite outdated by today's military standards. Most of our equipment is 2 decades old, which somebody mentioned in the comments informing me that the game is set in 1954, which is why the radio was so bulky. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought it was a bit later. I don't know. For some reason I really thought it was maybe in the 60s or something. But nope, it's mid-50s. So, yeah, the radio being the size it is makes absolutely perfect sense in the grand scheme of things. And this also means we're using 1920s, 1930s-ish equipment. So actually it really is literally just before World War II equipment. That's how old it is. So yeah, we're going to want to get that upgraded if at all possible. To make up for our lack of modern military equipment, we resort to a large number of soldiers, which is not really a long-term solution. Yeah, no shit. I've been trying to reduce the negative effects of this problem. We don't need a modernization program. A standardized purchase of lacking equipment would do. No, I think we do need a modernization program because it's 20-year-old equipment. And there's been a fair few technological advancements in the past 20 years, just before World War II and a decade after World War II ends is basically where we are. There's quite a bit of newer stuff out there. And also, that old stuff is going to get harder and harder to maintain as time goes on, because getting parts for it is going to get harder and harder because it's not being produced anymore. Or it's not being produced in the same numbers at the very least. We need more funding towards expanding the military size, otherwise our army will be seen as weak. Okay, where exactly is our army deployed right now? The first army is stationed at the Lispian-Wayland borders to protect the way into the central region of Sordland. What? Oh. Okay, so you're saying that the first army is basically basically just covering the entire southern portion of the country's border. Okay. I feel like that's... The first army must either be massive or they are spread super thin. I do not see the logic there for doing that. The second army, our largest... Okay, apparently... Okay. has been situated by the Rumburg border. Okay, so the second army is the largest. How many armies do we have? Did they say up here? 6 armies of 400,000 each. Okay. Just out of general curiosity. So we're averaging roughly 66,000 and some change troops per army. Okay. But evidently the armies aren't necessarily standardized in terms of size, at least in terms of troop count, if the second army is our largest force. The Second Army has a large mountain commando force, and it is the most adequately equipped army to face Rumburg. The Third Army is near the Agnolian border and the coastal areas facing Vogsland, so they're up here. I can certainly understand having troops up here. We're not in an alliance with Agnolia, at least at this time. Historically, we apparently were, though, if memory serves me correctly. And then, of course, I can understand having troops stationed for defending against some sort of naval invasion from Vogsland, although I'm assuming the Third Army is not all situated up here and along this coast. I'm assuming there are some down here, which I feel like really screws with your command if you have some of the Third Army down here in Lauren and some up here in Angland. That just doesn't quite make sense to me. So I'm assuming that... Yeah, no, that's just weird. That is a very weird way of doing it. They must all be up here in Angland. Some along the border and some along the coast. That's the only way that would make sense. Which means that in theory, these guys would be in a position to reinforce the Second Army should Rumburg invade. Due to our bitter past, our coastal defense force is always on alert. The decimation of our fleet is still not forgotten. Okay, how do we compare to other armies? Rumburg fields about 6 armies, amounting to 1 million soldiers. Okay, fun. Lispia fields 5 armies, which amount to 800,000 soldiers. And Vogsland fields 1 army of about 140,000 soldiers. I'm assuming Vogsland is, in many ways, kind of taking the British approach. They probably don't rely on having a large standing army, especially because, well, they're an island. So they probably put most of their efforts into their navy. And if they're smart, probably the Air Force as well. Because your main objective as Vogsland would be to prevent a successful naval invasion. You know, you'll deal with everything else. But your goal at the end of the day is just to prevent anybody from being able to actually get boots on the ground. Presumably. I don't know if that's actually their strategy off the top of my head, but that's what I would do if I was Vogsland. I'd rely on my navy for the most part. Wayland fields an army amounting to 100,000 soldiers, and Agnolia fields 2 armies with a total of 200,000 soldiers. Okay, both of them have armies that are larger than ours on average, but they have less troops in total, so okay. Lispia has more troops in total, but less armies. Not that that makes a significant difference. And then Rumburg has the same number of armies as us, but, 400,000 more soldiers. Which, yeah, that's quite a bit. The sheer size of Rumburg's army is because of their forced conscription laws. They are able to afford such a large force through their massive gold reserves, which significantly came from Rhesia over the past decades. So get on Rhesia's good side so that they stop supporting Rumsburg. Sounds like a great strategy. On the other hand, the Lispian army is the most advanced, followed by the Vogslandian army. Both of these countries put lots of money in modernizing their military. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Agnolia also presumably doesn't have necessarily much in the way of direct rivals, at least in terms of countries that they would necessarily expect to invade them. Lispia is probably not expecting Sordland to invade them, and Wayland, with all of its internal issues, is unlikely to be invading a neighboring country. And then to the south of Lispia, I believe, is, Rhesia across the Sudis Sea here, and so, again, probably not expecting the Kingdom of Rhesia to invade Lispia anytime soon. So they can get away with not having a large actual army. They just don't need it. Okay, no, I can get behind that. And again, like I said before, Vogsland doesn't need to rely on having a large army because they're an island. They probably mostly rely on their navy and air force. But what army they do have, they do want to make sure does have fairly modern equipment. Okay, well, I'm curious about another branch. Tell me about our navy. Our navy currently constitutes 59 vessels with a total of 60,000 sailors and support staff. As you know, these ships are commanded from our main naval base in Conriat, where our flagship SN Renan is docked. Okay, how does our navy compare to others? Our navy is dwarfed by the size of the Vogslandian navy, which has 194 ships, and the Agnolian navy that has 81 ships. Yep, okay, yeah, definitely Vogsland is relying largely upon their navy, which is understandable as a island nation. I'm a little bit shocked that Agnolia has such a large navy, considering that they are a substantially smaller country than us. But I guess they're taking a mentality of, well, one, we need to protect our claims on Helligeport here. Two, we don't expect Sordland to invade us, so... well, how large of an army did Agnolia have? 200,000. So not a massive one, which is probably largely due to their size. And a lot of their population probably lives in Stallport and Rit, if I had to make a guess. Okay, yeah. I'm a little shocked that Agnolia has such a large navy. I mean, it's not significantly larger than us. It's only about 30 ships, but nonetheless. We only surpass Lisbia in terms of our navy, as they have less than 30 ships. Okay, so Lisbia just doesn't really care too much about its navy. Although it probably is a fairly modern navy, while ours is probably, 20 years old. Though admittedly, ships do tend to last for a while, so I say Lisbia's navy is fairly modern. That's somewhat relative and may not be significant. As you see, the situation is dire, but the solution is not just more ships. To make a truly better navy, we need to equip our ships with modern radar and sonar systems. More outdated ships wouldn't mean much. Agreed fully, Kruger. Agreed fully. Although seemingly you didn't have that same mentality when it came to the army. You wanted to just keep buying the same 20-year-old crap that we've been using for the army, which I think is silly. Because I think I'd much rather buy us newer tanks rather than using 20-year-old tanks. Okay, which seas does our navy currently patrol? We're patrolling the Markian Sea, the Grey Strait, and the Antician Sea. Our navy protects all our coastal regions. However, to make sure we are not thinning out our defenses, we prioritize certain regions over others, like Greater Hull Sword. Understandable. Admittedly, if anybody was to launch a naval invasion of us, it would most likely be Greater Hull Sword, so... here along the kind of northern-ish coast, probably more so Hull Sword and Lauren. I don't think we exactly would expect somebody to be launching a naval invasion of Gruni out here. In all honesty. Not very many countries are in a position where this would be the optimal, well, maybe not optimal, but the quickest way to get boots on the ground. Let's see. We also control the routes that are close to the shipping lanes, especially Markian Sea and Grey Strait. The amount of cargo that goes through that area is eye-opening. Another thing to note is after the takeover of Helligeport, where our navy has led incursion operations to protect Agnolia, we also take part in some joint navy drills as well. Okay, so we also engage in naval drills with Agnolia, in some cases around Helligeport, which probably is pissing off Vogsland every time we do it. Sounds good. How are our capabilities in power projection? The truth is we are limited to our near region due to the size and technological levels of our naval ships. If we had modern support vessels, we could participate in international operations. That's right, we still hold some power though. If need be, we could block the trade of the Markian Sea. To make up for our weakness, allying ourselves to a naval power could help protect our seas. Okay, let's hear about the last force, which is going to be the Air Force. Our Air Force currently has 410 planes in the inventory, out of which only 140 are jet planes that are not in great condition. I'm assuming these are probably like meteors or some shit, I imagine. If I had to make a guess. So well, was the 20-year-old equipment specifically for the Army, or was that just a general across every force? I do not recall now. It might have been just for the Army. So we might have more modern aircraft. 30,000 pilots and support staff work in the Air Force, and they are commanded from the Mark Air Force Base in Urlori. Okay. What are our operational capabilities? Our planes can bomb targets within 400-kilometer radius of their airfield. They have medium range and semi-effective nighttime bombing capabilities. That's wonderful, and also I feel somewhat shocking for the 50s. I don't feel like night bombing was that great in the 50s, but then again, you do say semi-effective. So, okay, I'll give you that. At any time, we can field 7 air wings, composing a total of 130 aircraft that can operate in combat duty. This is enough to subdue most targets. In terms of our bombing capability, we have an average of 100 meters of precision. This is not great, but it is still within the effective radius of the bombs. Presumably depends upon the target, of course. Infantry, sure. 100 meters, probably fine. A tank? Probably not quite as effective. Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to basically mission kill the tank, maybe. You know, it might knock out the tracks and shit. And so the thing's not going anywhere. But 100 meters is a decent distance. Not ridiculous, but it's still a decent distance away. Okay, how experienced are our pilots? Our pilots have average experience. They have a total of 450 hours flight time with their craft before they are qualified. This gives them more than enough time to get used to it. This is low compared to 1,000 and 1,500 hours in other countries like Akazi, United Contena, Lispy, and even Vogsland. Okay. Normally, the hours per pilot should be higher, but due to the lack of funding, we can't increase the training times. Fuel costs are rather high. Okay. How does our Air Force work together with other military branches? The Air Force is trained as an independent tactical support branch, which means it assists other branches but doesn't collaborate. I feel like that's an oversight. This does cause some issues like friendly fire and missed close air support opportunities. There are ways to improve collaboration with joint operation rooms, something to think about, surely. Thought about it, and we're doing it. I'd like to know about the other branches. We don't have any other ones. Let's move on. The Ministry of Defense is content with the additional funds. Hopefully the allocated money helps our defense needs. The important thing is we put these funds to good use, as the people will need proof of our success in the military. We surely will. All spending topics will be addressed so the people can be proud of something that is theirs. I have some suggestions already. I'm sure that the people will approve something new and bold from us. I should move on to the spending choice. Sure, I want to hear the suggestions. The increase of the military budget leaves us with big questions about how to utilize it. There was a lot of debate at the ministry, which resulted in 2 factions of thought. The first faction is in favor of enlarging the armed forces by enlisting more men, while the second faction is in favor of purchasing better military equipment instead. Okay, what's the argument for increasing the size? Some of our neighbors have larger populations and thus a larger armed force. Using funds to boost their size would minimize their advantage. But we can also minimize their advantage by having more effective equipment. The reality is, for the primary opposition that our military would have, which is Rumburg, they are both significantly larger than us and have a significantly larger economy, which means that they can both have a larger army and more modern equipment. So I'm still generally more in favor of modernization. as the better option, the better use of our funds. Because obviously this world hasn't seen it happen yet. They still got like another, 40 years to go until they see it. But, you take a look at something like Desert Storm, and yeah, no, modern equipment is actually really nice to have. Theoretically, numbers alone don't determine the strength balance. Yeah, of course not. Enlisting more soldiers to the armed forces could also minimize the unemployment issue. Certainly true. I'm not convinced on this. What other reasons are there? Me neither. Reports show that we lack equipment, not men, for military efficacy or efficiency. We cannot beat on an overwhelmingly large enemy like Rumburg without numbers. But Kruger, that's the point of getting buddy-buddy with the ATO and forming an alliance with Agnolia potentially down the road if we actually have that as an option. If we're part of the ATO, Rumburg probably won't invade us, and if they do, we're gonna have support from Arcasia and maybe an alliance with Agnolia. That way, their men can also be thrown into the meat grinder and save us some losses. Sorry, I'm thinking about this from like a paradox viewpoint where I have no qualms about throwing AI troops into the meat grinder because they're not mine. It's really the simplest way to describe it. Okay, what's the argument for purchasing better equipment? The armed forces are behind in terms of military equipment in comparison to our neighbors. We need a fundamental modernization program. No matter how many advanced weapons and systems we buy, our enemies can overcome them. Only to a degree. That sounds bleak. Well, I fully believe quality over quantity. A smaller, well-equipped force can destroy a much larger one. Sir, I will be frank, Rumburg fields 3 times our force. True. Very much true. And that's why you don't go it alone. A modernization program won't mitigate our difference. Well, it will, just maybe not to the extent that you want, but I also don't believe throwing more troops with outdated equipment is necessarily a good solution either. And especially in the event of a war breaking out, that just means a lot more losses, which is more likely to bite us in the ass after the war. Even if we come out on top, the number of losses you would take from basically expanding the military significantly like that with outdated equipment. The reality is, what would be preferred if it was an option, I don't think it is unfortunately, would be both. Modernize our equipment, but since evidently we have an unemployment issue as well, also increase the size of the military. It may not increase quite as much as it would have if we just did an increase, but we'd have an increase. And they have modern equipment rather than grease guns. The era of large assaults and human wave tactics are over. Oh, I don't know about that, Esau. I know you don't have a time machine, but I think that's a little bit wishful thinking. We're heading to an era of modern combat which requires modern tools to adapt. I have settled on a decision. The generals are waiting for the word. I hope the decision is in the interest of all. Purchase better equipment and begin a modernization program. As you wish, but the decision will be negative for our old doctrine. Glad we made the right choice on this. I'll make the necessary arrangements. Esau and Vulcan looked at each other. That will be all for today then. Timer's about to go off. Dismissed. I'd like to extend my thanks for your attendance. The meeting concluded as the sun set over the concrete jungle that was Hullsword. Oh, okay, we've got a bit of stuff now, so let's see. Major military overhauls. Actually, you know what? I think I'll read this next time. That's going to be it for this part. I will see you all next time. Until then, goodbye and farewell.